Hello, I'm Geoff Kersey. In this lesson, we're going to look at a lot of the different techniques for painting winter trees, for wetting wet washes, shadows, colour mixing, etc., and try and pull them all together to make a simple watercolour scene. I've got a landscape here that I've drawn out, and a couple of things to bear in mind with this is that it's been designed specifically to lead the viewer into the scene. By that I mean that we have got the converging lines of the road and the hedgerows at either side, leading to a vanishing point in the picture here. Notice also with the drawing that I haven't put too much detail in. There's just a few branches on the trees and a few lines to indicate the shapes of things. So now that that's drawn out, we'll start by mixing some colours. I'm going to start by mixing a sky wash with ultramarine, just ultramarine and water. Again, it's a wetting wet wash, so I need to mix plenty of it. And then I want to mix some colour to suggest a few distant tree shapes. So we'll start again with some more ultramarine. Not as much water in it this time, quite a bit thicker. And I'm going to add to it some rose madder, giving us a sort of purple colour. And then I'm going to slightly grey that by adding a bit of the oriole into it. Okay, we'll have a bit of lighter colour as well. I'm going to take a bit of oriole in. Again, a little bit thicker than the sky wash, and put a bit of rose madder in that to create a sort of orangey brown shade. And finally, a little bit of green. I'm going to take some oriole in and a touch of ultramarine to give me a sort of medium green. Now I'm going to really make sure the brush is thoroughly clean and start to coat the whole of the sky area with clean water. I'm ignoring the drawing of the trees. Got to be able to see the sky behind the trees, so you need to paint straight across and ignore the pencil lines. Now when I get about halfway down the tree, I'm just going to take care to leave the trunk, that main trunk on just that one tree, as white paper. Keeping it nice and wet and coming right down to where that road disappears round the bend and out of the scene. And then straight away we'll get the wash of ultramarine and start laying that in at the top of the sky. Try not to cover all the paper with the blue, instead leave one or two little glimpses of white paper to give the impression of cloud. I'm thinning the colour a bit with water so that as I get lower down in the sky it gets a bit paler. That does help to create a feeling of distance if the sky is paler towards the horizon. Let's emphasise that by making the sky a little bit darker towards the top. And that's the sky done. I'm just going to have to wait a few moments till the shine starts to go off the paper so that it's just the right dryness for me to drop this colour in for the background trees. Let's try it. Let's just try it tentatively at first with the point of the brush. Yeah, that's spreading nicely. Little shapes like this to represent distant trees need to vary. They need to have variation in them so it doesn't look too contrived. Look how it's just softening gently into the background. Need to work fairly rapidly so that by the time I get to the left hand side it hasn't dried. Just bringing that right across there. Put a bit more strength in the bottom of this shape. And then while it's still wet, I'm going to drop in a bit of that orangey brown colour. Just a touch of warmth. Just letting that soften in and run. If you time this right, it's great to just let the colours just wash in together and run together. It almost does it for you. Okay, you can see now what a good idea it was to mix all the colours ready before we started, because I'm painting wet in wet without having to keep stopping to mix more paint. Let's just lay a bit more of that green in across there. A little bit at this side to match up with it. It's just a few variations in colour and shape to break it up. And then I'm just going to take that brown and now I'm going to darken it with some ultramarine blue. And there's just a point up at this right hand side of the scene where the colour's getting a bit stronger because it's getting a little bit nearer to us. Bringing a few little shapes down into the grass verge there. And then it's a case of just leaving that to dry. And now that that's dry, I'm going to take some of that orangey brown that I mixed earlier on, a lot of water to that so that it's very thin. And before we get on with the foreground, we'll just put a bit of shape in for these trees. Let's get a bit more of it and just put in a shape in to represent this tree. Okay, I'm going to lighten that slightly with a touch more rose madder in it. And then let's look at this one here. We'll put a bit of colour in for that tree there. And a little one over at this side. And then we can come back to that a bit later. Now let's look at the foreground now. I'm going to mix some more colour. I've got some more of this green that I mixed earlier with Oriolin and ultramarine. I just need a bit more of that. Not too strong. Let's make that a fairly bright green. Plenty of Oriolin in it. I want some more of that nice warm orange colour now. That was Oriolin and rose madder. Let's get some more of the dark brown. I can just mix it on top of the last lot. Oriolin, rose madder. This has got to be a bit thicker. If you want dark colours, you have to have less water in them. And then add to that some ultramarine, so that gives us a nice rich dark brown. And one more colour, I think. I'm going to take some Oriolin and ultramarine to make another green, but this time a stronger, darker green. Right, let's start with the orangey colour, bringing this along here. Almost like a bit of dry stone wall across there. And then let's get a bit of the green. Put the green at the bottom of it straight away so we can paint wet in wet. Getting that nice bright green. And I'm bringing that down to where this verge meets the road. Let's get some more of that green into it. A little bit into there as well. Now where that meets the road, soften it. So I'm cleaning the brush. And I don't want a really wet brush, I just want a damp, clean brush. And for the moment, till I come back to paint the road, I'm just softening that line in. And then straight away, let's get some of that darker green and bring some of that in the very foreground. A bit of the lighter green as well to soften it in. Maybe a few touches with the very point of the brush to sort of pick out the edge of that. And I'm going to soften that at the moment where it meets the base of that tree. Let's look at this left-hand side and put some shaping with a dry brush for a sort of bush at this side. Just using the side of the brush again, so we get a bit of dry brush work. In that down onto there. Let's get a bit of light into the picture with this warm orangey colour, Oriolin and rose madder, and put a touch of that along here. Leaving just a little bit of white paper like the light's just catching the edge of it. Now the green, Oriolin and ultramarine, and let's put this little verge in here. Bringing it right to the edge of the road again like we did at the right hand side. Right out to that bottom corner. I'm going to just take a damp clean brush, get a little bit of Oriolin on it. No blue with this, just bright yellow, and let's drop a bit of that into that point there. Create a bit of light. And then straight away let's get that dark green across that bottom left hand corner. Notice I'm bringing darker colours into the foreground to make it that bit stronger. And then just like we did at the right hand side, I've got a damp clean brush, not too wet, and I'm just softening that edge in. Okay, now straight away, before I do anything else to it, I'm going to mix some colour for the road. I'm going to take some of that orangey colour again. That's the Oriolin and rose madder. Fairly thin, this is fairly thin wash. And we'll put a thin coating of clean water over the whole of the road area. Make sure that if you've got something like a road on a bright day, that it reflects some of the colours around it rather than just seeing it as grey. Some of that orangey colour across the road. Trying to leave a bit of white paper where it goes out of the picture down there. We'll take a little drop of that purple colour and work that in. Make sure, notice I had both colours ready so that when I worked them in together, they soften and merge in the middle of the road there. And then I think in the very foreground, I'll drop a bit of the blue that matches the sky. So that really sort of brings it forward. touch of that blue wouldn't hurt into here as well, just a few touches of it to suggest the very foreground of the scene. Bit more dark green right to finish that corner off. And then before we paint the trees, we need to leave that to dry.